Dear Grownups, it's Jessica here. Today we're answering another listener's question. This question comes from Samuel's mom. He's 3 years old and has been recently diagnosed with autism. She writes in saying, "My son, who's making a lot of progress in therapy, is starting to struggle at home. How can he do so well in his therapy sessions and then come home and fall apart? He's starting some of his same destructive and dangerous habits like self-harming and even hurting his little brother. What can she do?" First, I want to pause and say, if this sounds familiar to you, don't worry, you're not alone. We're going to dig into why maybe this is happening and some of the things that you can do instead. Let's think about why this might be happening. Learning a new skill takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of mental energy. It takes a lot of sensory regulation to be able to focus on the new task that you're doing. It takes a lot. So learning something in a therapy session where it's with one individual, and I don't know a lot of answers about this therapy session to kind of guide you in any way, but without knowing what the therapy session is like, we're going to pretend like it's best case scenario. But at this therapy session, they're very focused on learning these specific skills. And those specific skills are hard to learn for the child. Coming home, there's a whole lot more factors that the child has to sift through in order to employ those new skills they're learning. Learning is messy and it takes a long time. So it's not surprising that they're not immediately coming home from therapy and employing those skills. Another thing that could be happening and we do need to address is your child during the therapy session could be masking. And if you're not familiar with the term masking is, I'll put some more resources in the show notes, but masking is what happens when an individual hides some of their natural tendencies and natural behaviors in order to appear like they don't have the disability that they have. It's different than learning new skills to help you be functional in the environments that you're in, but masking could be happening here. And so what you need to make sure is that when you do come home from therapy, that your child has a time to decompress, to regulate their sensory system, because while they're at therapy, they may have been putting some things on the back burner and not coping with their sensory systems like they should have been. So when they come home, find out, do they need input or do they need to avoid stimulus, and give them that time to be able to regulate their sensory systems. It's kind of like when a child goes to school and is really on target at school all day and then comes home and has a hard time. Think of your home as a safe place. So your child knows this too. They know when they come home, they can let it all out and they can give way to some of their sensory needs or sensory seeking behaviors, or they can go back to some of the skills that they already know how to do. It's their safe place to practice things as well. Therapy is work for your child, even if it is as play-based and child-led as we hope it to be. It is still hard for your child because it's different and they're learning a new skill. So maybe don't plan to go to Walmart right after a therapy session, even if it is on the way home. Maybe don't plan to have that play date if it is not sensory regulating. Find a way for your child to have some time to reset before having another demand placed on them. You can use one of my favorite things. You can use a visual schedule to let them know what to expect. We're going to go to therapy, then we're going to have a car ride, and then we will be home. And then we're going to have a snack. Letting them know what's going to happen gives them that predictability, and it gives them some autonomy and makes them feel in charge again. Without knowing what skills Samuel is working on in therapy, this makes it a little bit more difficult to answer this question, but let's just role play for a little bit. Let's pretend that Samuel is working on turn-taking strategies at therapy, and he's doing exceptionally well. Why is he doing it well at therapy, but then when he comes home with his younger brother, it's not working? This is very common, and it's still a great way for him to practice these skills, but playing with his younger brother versus playing with the therapist is different. The therapist is more predictable. The therapist isn't going to grab toys away from Samuel. Even if they do try to set that up, it's still not the same as having a younger brother grab your toy car from you. So it's normal to forget what you've learned in therapy and be able to apply it in those immediate in real world scenarios. Definitely have this conversation with the therapist. Find out what they're doing during the sessions. Are those things that you can replicate in your home? What you're ultimately wanting is for what the child is learning in the therapy session, you want to generalize that. That's the big word, generalize. You want to generalize that skill to your child's everyday life. So you want Samuel to be able to take the things he's learning in therapy and to be able to do them at home. Do them during his morning wake up routine. Do them when he goes to preschool. Do them when he's playing with his little brother. Do them when he is cleaning up his toys at night. Do them on the family outings. You want him to be able to take that skill, to do that skill in multiple different places. That kind of goes down to looking at what therapy you are receiving. You want to make sure that the therapy that your child is receiving is functional. And so functional means, is this a skill that they need to function in society, to function in preschool, to function in the church nursery, to be able to function playing with his brother? If it's not a skill that you think he needs to function, then maybe it's not a skill that you need to be focusing on during therapy. Have those conversations with your therapist. Try to decide what's happening at home versus what's happening at therapy, and what's going to make the biggest difference in Samuel's life and your life as a family, and figure out how can we incorporate more of those skills in therapy, and then how can we take those skills he's learning in therapy and embed them in his everyday routines, so that way he's getting lots of practice doing that skill. We don't want the only time that Samuel is working on these skills at therapy. And we also don't want to take playtime and all of that away from Samuel. We want to protect those things, but we want to find ways to work on those skills at home too. What you're going to want to ask your therapist is what are some of the ways that you practice turn taking? Maybe they're using some visual supports. Maybe they show a picture, a board maker symbol of a child sharing a toy car with another child before they play. If they do that, try to implement that in your home as well during playtime with the younger brother. Have those visuals ready so that way it mimics what you see at therapy at home as well. Try to practice these skills in low stress moments. So that playtime with that favorite car may not be the best time to practice turn-taking skills. Maybe it's a better time to practice turn-taking when you're baking in the kitchen with the two boys. You can have Samuel stir, then give the brother a chance to stir. Maybe when you are watering the plants, Samuel gets a turn to water this plant, and then the little brother gets a turn, and then Samuel gets a turn. Sometimes if we do it when emotions are high, like that favorite red car, we're not going to get the results that we want because our emotions are too high. When you look at your day and you try to think, when are all of the opportunities that Samuel can practice turn taking, try to find times that he can be successful. When are those small wins going to happen? Maybe don't plan those in for high stress times. Maybe not when you're rushing to get out the door for church. We may not want to practice turn taking then. We may want to do that when we have more time and the results don't matter at the end so much. My son received some physical therapy for some weak hips and core strength and some foot and leg placement the end of one school year and through a summer. And so some of the questions I had for the therapist at the end of the session, what did you do in the therapy session? And then we would try to find times that he could implement those skills at home. So he had a lot of things like picking things up with his toes and moving them from place to place. That's a little bit more difficult to embed during your natural routine of the day, but we kind of made it a game. So when he took his socks off at night, we tried to see, can you pick those up with your toes and put them in the hamper? Can you pass something to your sister? Like really random things, but we tried to figure out ways to weave that into his everyday, because if we can practice that every day once or twice or through multiple times of the day, that's even more practice that he is getting on a regular basis, and it's in real life experiences as well. An example of that would be if Samuel's working on following one-step directions with visual cues, then maybe at home you can find ways that you can work on following one-step directions. Those might be things like When he's getting ready in the morning, following a visual schedule. When it's playtime, can we play a game of Candyland, and having a visual schedule on how to play Candyland. You are kind of embedding that skill of following directions throughout your daily routine. Can you help me set the table tonight? Can you put a fork beside every plate? And maybe you have a visual schedule for that, so that way he knows to put a fork by every plate. That would be an example. You know I'm going to say it. You could start to take some notes at home and see, okay, here's the things he's working on at therapy. Find the different times at home when he could work on those skills and take some notes. Is he doing those things? Does he need a little help during those skills? Does he need a little help following one-step directions? Did he need a reminder? That way you can see the progress that is happening. It's a lot easier for a therapist during a therapy session when they're one-on-one with a child or one with a small group to pay close attention to those skills, and they can collect that data. When it's just your child at home, it gets a little bit more messy, and so we don't always see progress even when progress is happening. So I would suggest that you start to collect some data so you can see that progress and you can celebrate those wins with your child too. And as far as the sibling thing goes, if you know that the end of a therapy session when you come home, Samuel's going to have a hard time and is more likely to kind of lash out at the brother, that's when you're going to need to provide some proximity. You're going to need to make sure you're close. Maybe that's a time that you find that Samuel needs some one-on-one attention with just you. So maybe you're going to want to have something for the younger brother to do that he's not going to need as much of your attention for. You might want to divide and conquer. You might want Samuel's dad to play with the little brother while you play with Samuel. Or you just want to make sure you're there to supervise those things. And if you know that there is a very calming activity for Samuel, let's say that taking a walk is very calming for Samuel, include the little brother on the walk and kind of teach him some ways that help Samuel calm his body too. So to Samuel's mom and to every other parent who's dealing with differences between therapy and home, you're not alone. You're doing a great job. You are the safe place that your child needs. You're the safety net. You're the place where he's going to take what he's learning in therapy and practice it. And that's a great place to be. It's a difficult place to be, but it's a great place to be. And remember that learning is not always linear. It's messy, and you might take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sound like Paula Abdul, but it's happening. And if you're collecting that data, you're going to see some of that as well. So take a deep breath. You've got this. Let me know other questions that you have. Until next time, I'll see you later.